Welcome to the Power Exit Podcast. This show is dedicated to business owners who want to scale up, plan smarter, and prepare for the ultimate exit. We'll talk with M&A experts and owners who've been through the process to provide actionable advice so that you can sell your business on your terms and without regret. I'm John Marsh. Join me as we prepare to take control of your exit. All right, welcome to the next episode of the Power Exit Podcast. I'm thrilled to have a friend and colleague, Ryan Hemmert, with Washington Business Brokers here today. Ryan is he's a business broker, M&A advisor in Washington. Ryan, say hello, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do.
John, thank you. I am thrilled to be here with you. You are one of the advisors I have respected for a long time in our tribe, our small tribe of experts. So thank you for letting me do this. Yes, folks, I'm in Seattle and let's hear. It is sunny out here today for the record, and it's going to be sunny the rest of the week for the record, again. And I've been doing deals for about 6 years and have a bunch of war stories, success stories, some deals that went terribly awry, and I'm happy to tell you about any and all of them.
Yeah, wonderful. And as you know, the goal of this podcast is to impart some wisdom to those business owners who are thinking about selling the process or beginning a process to sell their business. I know you have opinions on that. I do too. So this will be interesting as we chat through kind of what we see that works, what we see that doesn't. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about your practice, Ryan. Are you only helping business owners doing sell side work? Do you also do buy side work? Any industry focus? Just give us a little bit of background. I know you love that question.
Let's see here. So yes, 95% of my time is helping owners when they are ready to sell, right? Yeah. So some folks market themselves as a coach or consultant or something like that, like some sort of fractional resource. Yeah. And, I tell owners, like I have a large network of those folks, but I help people get through a very specific process, right? And that is the process of valuing their business, right? Going to market, finding the ideal buyer, and then getting the dang thing done, right? Yeah. So that's me. That's 95% of my time. 3 buckets of businesses that I work a lot with. The first is easy to understand. It is guys with trucks. So I do a lot of guys and trucks businesses. In the last year, 50-year-old roofing business, 70-year-old plumbing business, 40-year-old sewer and drain business, landscaping business, tree care business, on and on and on. Many guys and trucks businesses. That's bucket 1. Bucket 2, partly because of where I'm at in the country, a lot of niche, very lucrative service businesses. And so, for example, pharmacological compliance. There's a lot of biotech out here, right? One of them just got bought, it was a $1.5 billion deal for a 200 employee biotech yesterday in Seattle. So there's many biotech companies out here. Many of them don't have their own compliance department. Right. And so they outsource that. So 10-person firm out here, owners taking home $1 to $2 million a year with 10 employees. Right. Yeah. So that would be a niche lucrative service. Another one out here would be toxicology assessments on water runoff on Boeing parts. Right. So a lot of these really, really specialized things. That's the second bucket. Third bucket is easy. It's everything else. Yeah. Right. So guys and trucks, niche lucrative services, everything else.
I like the way you described that. I jokingly say that I sell dirty businesses. Oftentimes they're, site prep work, there's plumbing, there's landscaping, but I don't have any dirt underneath my own fingernails. Bad joke, but the point is you don't ask me to run your business, but I can sure help you sell it, right? So let's talk a little bit about that, right? You've got a lot of business owners in this market who are being approached directly by buyers, right? There's strategic buyers, there's private equity, there's even individual searchers who are out trying to get in front of these business owners. In your opinion, what goes wrong when a business owner tries to do this themselves, sell their business themselves?
Many things can go wrong then.
We only have 30 minutes here, Ryan.
The biggest one is unrealistic expectations of value, right? So unrealistic expectations of value, so that's big. But I think even more important that I caution a lot of owners when I hear this story, because many owners reach out to someone, John, like you or I, when they've been approached by someone, right? And they don't know what to do, or they've started to share information, and guess what? They're getting frustrated because the conversation has been dragging on for 6 months, a year, 2 years, right? And so this is probably the biggest risk I see in these situations, is that the seller, right, who doesn't have the same energy level because they're 64 and they're going to Europe for 4 weeks at a time and whatever it may be, right? They're thinking that the sale with that buyer that they've been going back and forth with for 6 months is going to happen. And the buyer, of course, has no urgency, right? Because they have another business that they're operating, right? And they've got their own fires and headaches that they're dealing with. And so what tends to happen is that the business suffers, sometimes greatly, during this process.
Yeah.
And just anecdotally, I tell sellers this a lot. Like, I've sold about almost 25 businesses, right, in the last 6 years. With every seller that we take on, they get to put up to 3 buyers, 3, we call them name buyers, directly in our engagement agreement, right? And we say, hey, in the event the buyer for your business is, Bob in Tacoma, right? Jill in Portland, or so-and-so in Sacramento, right? Our fee is discounted such, right? And guess what? In almost 25 sales, how many times has one of the name buyers ended up being the buyer? 0 times, not once. And I tell every seller, like, hey, I hope you're the exception. I hope you're the first. It would be a nice story because you maybe know the other person, More often than not, like, it's just sheer probability, right? When we get involved, we can draw in so many people through professional marketing and the power of the internet, fun stuff like that. And we can also just drive a better price with somebody that's ready to get it done now.
Right. Well, and there's so much we could talk about with this. Business owners, like you said, spend a lot of time focusing on the deal and neglecting their business. And that the buyer is going to ask us every month for an updated TTM. And they're going to press pause if there's 1 or 2 months, 3 months of trending downward. And that's a bad thing, because it is very, very hard to run your business successfully and sell your business successfully. But you mentioned something, the named buyers. I don't know the stats, but I heard something like 1 out of 100 buyers who sign an NDA on a deal will ever buy a business. Now, not that business, but just buy a business in general.
Yeah.
The corporate refugees, the folks who are trying to figure out this entrepreneurship through acquisition, they're noisy. They take a lot of time and energy. And one of the things we do, I'd love to hear what you do to vet buyers, but is to make sure that they're financially capable. If we don't know them, give us a personal financial statement. Give us a letter from the bank. And oh, by the way, we hope you've talked to more than one, because banks back out our deals. So I've just went on a soliloquy there, but tell me a little bit about what you do when you talk to a buyer. How are you vetting them and feeling them out to see if they're quality or capable of doing a deal?
I carefully judge so it's a couple things. It's their willingness to share information about themselves, right? And their financial capacity. And if a buyer is serious, and ready to move forward, they have these things ready, right? These aren't like, oh, let me go talk to a lender, or, oh, I'm just getting my ducks in a row. No, they're at the dance, right? They've got their breath mints and their Listerine, and they're ready to roll. Right. And, so there's that. But then the second thing, though, is I'll just say it. I judge buyers, right? I judge people I judge them. I evaluate them based on the quality of their questions. Right. And so I'm making a very quick assessment based on the questions a buyer is asking me initially, right? About their knowledge level and about their seriousness. And I'll give you an example of this. One of the businesses I sold last year was a 70-year-old plumbing business. And I helped owner 3 sell to owner 4. One of the searchers, right? I live in Seattle. I've got I'm drowning in searchers, right? They're practically right outside my front door, right? They're all over the place here. And, and I'm living in a world where I'm getting 200 of these people that are reaching out on every business that I bring to market. And these searchers, many of them have a tech background. They're all highly educated. Many of them have no problem meeting the financing, right, part. Where they fall down again and again is on fit, right? Mm-hmm. And so questions on that plumbing business, for example, what is the customer lifetime value of a plumbing customer, right? As soon as I see that question, right, probably not the right, buyer, right? Like that is a red flag when I see that kind of question about the customer lifetime value on a 70-year-old plumbing business, right? And like that just tells me that, hey, they're scraping the internet. Hey, they're using an AI tool. They're bombing us with a list of 40 questions about a business, like whatever it may be, and that's fine. But you are not, you are not presenting yourself well in a competitive process. Right. And when we get lists like that, like I'll challenge and I'll say, hey, John, thank you for your very thorough list of questions received. Can you help me prioritize? If you could only get 5 of these answered, what are the 5 questions you'd like to see answered before you decide if it's a yes, no to move forward?
Yeah. And there's, a lot of different thoughts there. And I agree, we're not going to waste our time. Time is our most valuable resource, as we all know.
John, I'm curious, like how are you? I mean, I know you've got a couple deals right now, right? Where you're getting crushed too with buyers. Like, how are you, like, how do you run them through that process? Because the volume of buyers, to people like us, like it can be overwhelming at times.
Yeah, no, it is. And, obviously we're always networking with buyers. We're throwing, a teaser to these buyers who we know, and we'd prefer that one of those were interested in the deal. But if somebody comes off the street and asks us, to look at a deal, we're going to have them sign an NDA, and then we're going to ask them questions. And to your point, if they can't say, well, it depends on the deal. Once I know the deal, I'll be able to tell you how I would finance it. And that's a chicken and the egg problem, but we're not going to go first. You're going to have to show us where the money comes before we even share our client's name. And we're adamant about that. And to your point, if a buyer doesn't know that or isn't familiar with that, then they're not serious and they're not the right fit for us. But the other thing we're doing, and I think you're doing it too, we'll talk about this in the process section, but is, we want an IOI from you, an indication of interest, before you meet our client. We're not going to put everybody who says, oh, I want to meet the client in front of our client. Otherwise, we're wasting time, and that client is getting a little angry with 50 Zoom calls. Yeah. So we say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, how are you going to, how do you value this deal? And they give us a range and an IOI. And yes, we'll do some FAQs. We'll answer some questions. But hopefully the materials we put together are enough for someone to provide a range, right? Yeah. And we're going to drive to that IOI process every time before we spend, hours and hours and hours answering questions, going back and forth. It's a simple, hey, do you think this is worth it? So I'll give you a quick example. We're selling a business now, and we did the same thing you did. We had a named buyer agreement, and this buyer had contacted our client. We're happy to include them in the process. We love that. We had an IOI deadline. It came and went. We got 3 IOIs, but nothing from this group, except an email 2 days later that says, hey, we need to go talk to your biggest supplier before we can put together an LOI. And my response was, that will happen 2 days before closing. Being a little, aggressive there. But the point is, enough about this business to put a value on it. And this was a time waster. And my client saw that pretty quickly, which is why we were thrilled or happy to put them in a named buyer exclusion and reduce our rate on that group. Yeah. So it's really just about, can they adhere to the process? Can they show their cards before we do? And if they get it, they get it. If they don't, they're going to go buy a business from somebody else.
Yeah, I love that. I love that story. You just you just nailed it with the name buyer, like yet again, right? See, they wasting time, right? Like burning time. And I bet that seller had been waiting or hoping, right? Like that buyer was going to get it done.
Yeah. And, that buyer wouldn't even return my phone calls. They did not want to be included in the process. Yeah. They went directly to the owner. It's fine, but that's a big sign as well. Ryan, there's a misconception here that the only thing we do is bring a buyer to the table, right?
Yeah. And so, John, to continue that point, Axial is one of the platforms that that a lot of advisors use, and they put out. I look at a lot of these quarterly kind of updates or quarterly reports, right? I'm always looking at those to get a sense of what's going on. Axial, there were some interesting stats in their most recent report that came out in the last 2 weeks, and it kind of resonated. I'm just going to read you a couple of the numbers. A pool services company, so swimming pool, number of buyers 894. Right? Let me get this right. Electrical contractor, right? So obviously electricians, can name their price, right? In today's data center world. Electrical contractor, 2.7 million in EBITDA, 669 inquiries, right? A structural contractor, this one's in the South, 5.1 million of EBITDA, 820 inquiries.
Wow.
Right. And so, like to your question of like, a lot of people think like all we do is find the buyer or something like that. Like, folks, it's the internet. There's amazing things about the internet, right? There's some less than amazing things about the internet too. One of them is that the reality is it's easier than ever to identify a large field of prospective buyers, right? And the expertise really comes in efficiently vetting those buyers, right? And running a process, a competitive auction process, right? To find the optimal buyer that's ready to move forward now, that has their financing in place, and that's adaptable and agreeable, right? Because we all know, like, to get a deal done, right, there's a lot of give and take and back and forth, and you're not going to get everything you ask for, right, on structure or in diligence or an illegal agreement, whatever it may be, right? And neither is the seller, right? And so we're looking for both parties that are adaptable and and that can reason.
Yeah, no, I like it. And do you put prices on your deals when you're running those auction processes?
Some yes, some no. So we've got so right now we have 4 deals live, and we have both, right? So so we took two, yeah, it's actually 2 and 2 right now, interestingly, on those 4. 2 we took to market without a price, right? And and one was a fabrication business with about a $3 million 3-year average EBITDA. So we took that to market without a price. Another was a engineering design and build firm, $7 million in revenue, took it to market without a price to find the optimal buyer. The other 2 businesses, one's a children's autism clinic. We set a firm price on that one. And the last one is a medical spa, right? So it's a cosmetic dermatology practice. So we have prices on those 2, right? And, when we're driving towards that, hopefully can exceed it in either case. Yeah.
Yeah. And just curious, because we don't put prices on anything. And I go back and forth because if it's an SBA deal and we think it's going to get done through an SBA backed buyer, the price is kind of, there's a ceiling on it, right? I mean, at some level, the bank's going to say, hey, we can't do that. But let me give you an example of a deal that, and I'm sure you have, I would love to hear a similar story, but we had a client engage us who had a buyer already at the table. They'd been through the process. They'd gotten a purchase agreement, but the deal fell apart. That client had an offer of $27 million all cash, and he walked away. Hired us to come in and build a little bit of a market for it. And we talked to 7 buyers. That same buyer ended up closing on the transaction at $36 million in all cash. Yep. It's just like you or me going to buy a car. You're going to get the best deal that you can. Yeah. But we know what businesses are worth, and we're going to help drive that process so that we don't leave anything on the table. Have you seen an example where your client's expectations were exceeded because of the competitive energy you built?
Oh, yes.
Every deal?
A number of times. I'm struggling about it, how to word it. A number of times. Yeah. This one's on my, this one's on the homepage of my website. It's my very first deal, right? So I can say the business name and the owner's name. The whole story is online for those that want to read it. Right Way Cleaning and Restoration in Linwood, Washington. Okay. Very first deal we did 5 or 6 years ago. And I got a call from So the business is here in Washington, of course. I get a call on an afternoon in the middle of the week from an adult son of the older seller. Adult son is in Arizona. Hey, my dad's got an offer for his restoration business. I think my dad might be getting taken advantage of.
Oh, wow.
Right? I'd like you to talk to him. I'd like you to talk to him. I told him I would get him a couple names. Da 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 da. An hour later, I'm on the phone with the dad. He's got a handshake offer. He's got a handshake offer from another business owner in the same business park, right? And I said, look, I said, don't sign anything. Send me and he's known this other owner for years. I said, send me the document. And he wasn't even sure how to send it to me, right? God bless him, humble, salt of the earth person, horrible with technology, and he would tell you that, right? Like, and so literally taking shaky hand pictures of his cell phone, right, of this LOI, right, trying to send it to me, and I'm trying to walk him through that over the phone. Yeah. So he sends it to me. I start to look at it, and this offer is atrocious. It's seller financed. It's over 7 years. The buyer's going to put down 10% of the money. It gets worse, but they're going to keep the cash in the business. The cash of the business was quite substantial, right? And so they were going to literally use the cash in the business to pay the 10% down. So zero money to the seller, right? Zero money to the seller. And I mean, just alarm bell after alarm bell, right? And and so there was that. So so eventually, that owner, so Daniel Wright, he talks to us, he talks to 3 other advisors, happy to say, he selected us. We start working with him. We took the business to market at a fixed price. We raised the price on the business 3 times during the process because it was a wet winter out here. And in 1 week, there were a couple of bad storms. And in a couple of weeks, they were doing $500,000 in a week, and his crews were working 80 hours a week, right? Wow. Because of water damage storms. So we kept raising the price as these things were happening. We raised the price 3 times, right? And the business gets sold above that third price that we raised it at, right? Wow. He paid our fee to us and walked away with wildly more, right, than he would have received, right, with that other offer, right? And that was our first deal. And again, the whole story is online, so that's why you hear me saying the name of the owner, and he's a friend, but that's one I'm proud of. He used the money to build a house for battered women with his church right here. Right? Like that's what he did with the money.
That's awesome. Yeah. Good for him. Good for you. And isn't that what makes us tick? I mean, yes, we're lucky that we can pay our mortgage by doing this, but it's awesome to help people who've built a wonderful business and they can exit on the same terms that they built it on top. Yeah. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I do want to kind of flip to maybe the other side of the coin. And I'll start with just telling you something that happened to me this week. Two former clients called me and said, hey, can you take a look? It's been a couple of years since we worked together. We ended up not selling their businesses primarily because of valuation expectation, a difference in valuation expectations. One was an electrical contractor that made a pivot from residential to commercial. And his EBITDA went from 1.5 million to 0, and asked me if a buyer would look at the trailing 3 years and value his business based on those results. And the answer is absolutely not. It's just not going to work. So luckily he's a young man and he's going to be able to right the ship, but he's got a long road ahead of him. Another was a gentleman, 75 years old. He had a travel business, and we started marketing his business in February of 2020, right before COVID. So we worked for a long time during, a pandemic that dramatically impacted his industry directly in a negative way. But we did bring him an offer the following year, and he just couldn't part with the business for a price that he thought didn't reward him enough. And his business has gone to 0. He's 75 years old, and it's not worth anything now. Those are hard stories. It hurts, right? But tell me a little bit about some deals where you've seen things just not work out the way they could have and why.
Yeah, sure. Ooh, yeah, a couple tough ones there. Another trades business. This was a sewer and drain business. And, in this one, um, the owner had a couple of kids, who, they were trying to get set up in life, right? Like, we all want to help our kids. And, so gave her daughter first an opportunity to run the business, and it just did not go well, right? Didn't go well. A business that was effectively breaking even started to go negative, right? Like, so, started to report consistent losses. So swapped her out, right? And she went on to try to find some other, career or path in life. Then brought in her other child,
Mm.
other adult son, and other adult son, same thing. Didn't have a gift or talent or really a passion, right? He was a backup option only because his sister, right? Everybody had hoped that the sister would be able to continue to operate the business and generate a profit, and the parents
Yeah.
could step back. And the son, although he was a little more business minded, the business still did not do well, right? But he was very upfront in saying this was not his passion, and he was clear once he got in there that this was not what he wanted to do,
Mm.
right? And so, I was pulled in by the financial advisor, right, that had been helping the seller's family for a long time. And, in that case, we take a business to market that isn't performing at its best,
Yeah.
right? And it's a messy situation. On top of it, while we were engaging buyers, one of the star techs, like one of the best performing, like best revenue making technicians for the business, was in an accident. And it
Mm.
gets worse, like in an accident in a work truck, and it was a relatively new work truck, and it was the employee's fault. It was deemed
Mm.
the employee's fault, right? So that happened. So that was a pretty significant. Any trades owner knows that if you lose a star tech, right, it can be, in a month, it can be a $200,000 a month hit, right?
Right.
If you got a technician or a crew out, right, or more. And why we were in diligence on that one, another employee. Can you believe in 20 years they'd had no employees get in work related vehicle accidents, and in 3 months we had two.
Wow.
And this was on
Mm.
top of the other issues, right? And in the case of that business, I had a seller who had health issues that were getting worse, and I would be on a Zoom with her and her attorney, and she would be in bed, right? She's literally in bed, right?
Wow.
And in bed on Zooms with the buyer too, because of
Wow.
health issues. Yeah.
Wow. Mm.
So I mean, challenging situations. You mentioned the 76 or 77. I've seen some people that I would love to be as healthy as they are at those ages. Some other people that aren't so healthy, but a takeaway for me is, like, everybody, there's seasons of life, right? And we all go through them,
Yeah.
right? There's also seasons of life for every business, right? You're in this, like, growing, you're in this maintaining, and then you're in this decline phase, right? And it takes a lot of self-awareness to step back and say, like, many owners get to this maintain phase, right? And the best ones can keep it in this maintain phase when you and I get involved. A lot of them, though, start to be at the edge of the maintain and decline phase, right? In some
Mm.
cases when we get involved. Sometimes it's age related. Sometimes it's just because the person has financially, they have enough, right? And when you're 64 years old, most 64-year-olds aren't chasing dollars, right? Like the 38-year-old buyers that we deal with, right? They're in the wealth accumulation phase. They have young kids, et cetera, right? But for a lot of the sellers, it's hard for buyers to understand that many of the sellers aren't motivated by money anymore,
Right.
right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, and so we see that a lot, right? Where the business, they take their foot off the gas because the business is providing them a perfectly comfortable lifestyle, right? So they stop chasing the growth, and they just get comfortable with the way things are.
Yeah, and that's a fine thing to do if you're going into it eyes wide open and say, I'm going to turn this into a lifestyle business and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
impact the transferability and the value of the business. But a lot of folks don't make that decision consciously, right?
yeah,
They'll let their business create a robust customer concentration because they're neglected, growing outside of their original clients. And that's hard to transfer, or, over reliance on one key employee who could walk away with everything if there's no agreement or no contract there to protect you as the business owner.
Can I ask, John, what's a challenging situation that you were contacted about, or a challenging deal that you've had?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but we walk away from probably 9 out of the 10 deals that come our way. And it's usually because of valuation expectations, or if the financials aren't clean, or there's some big red flag, because candidly, we want to be successful. We want to help the client, but we also work on a success fee. We're not going to, our time is valuable, and we need to have some reasonable expectations of success. But we do want to help everybody. And that's what's hard, right? When someone comes to you and says, hey, I really need the help. So we try to make referrals and introductions. Every deal has challenges, as you know. I don't want to use the analogy of a cat, but you're going to get that late night phone call from the client or the buyer with what appears to be an issue that is going to kill the deal or could kill the deal. I've found that most of the time, if you wait 24 hours before reacting, that the issue doesn't go away, but clearer heads will prevail. I'm trying to think of I've got a client now. I won't say the industry, but they had a very, very bad 2024. They invested a lot of money in different divisions that ended up cannibalizing some existing revenue and not contributing to incremental revenue. So, they've got a great business, a couple $1 million of EBITDA, but the previous year shows a loss. And now's not the perfect time for them to sell, but there are some factors outside of their control that are dictating the situation. They're eyes wide open, fully aware of how this will impact it, but it's kind of sad in that they didn't prepare to be ready to exit before or have a plan before. It was an external factor. And that's what I think is the hardest to swallow when it's a health-related issue, a partner divorce, a marital divorce that's causing the timeline to be accelerated. Those are hard ones for me to stomach. How about you?
Oh, yeah, I have one right now. I just got contacted yesterday. Well-known CPA, one of his firm's clients. They have a successful business, husband, wife, owner. Husband is in hospice. Need evaluation immediately, right? And trying to resolve it right before he passes, right? So that's one. We sent them an email. They paid the fee. The CPA already sent us all of the financials we asked for, right? And I'm going to talk to them here tomorrow. Good. Right? So that's one. Another one, a year or two ago, middle of the week, 7 or 8 o'clock at night, check my email on my phone, and I have a book length email, and it's an introduction. Owner, Ryan, you were referred to me. I have stage 4. I don't know my stages of cancer. I'm sorry. I have stage 4, such and such cancer. I have 2 business partners. All 3 of us have equity in this business. We have agreed to get an independent evaluation of the business, and they're going to buy out my equity, right? And I want to get this resolved so my family doesn't have to deal with it in probate, right? So, I've had a couple of these situations, right? But just this one yesterday is top of mind, right? And and like health, like I said, there are stages of life, right? Like for all of us, right? And and for businesses too. And and sometimes like it just doesn't go according to our plan.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. They're lucky to have you. I hope the call tomorrow goes well for everybody. All right, we've got a couple more minutes left here, and I want to just maybe talk a little bit about the emotions of going through a transaction. Unfortunately, we are used to the ups and downs, but how do you help your clients through the process? What have you seen as successes and challenges when the diligence request list doesn't stop.
Yep. Living this now with 2 sellers and 2 deals, with quality of earnings reports ongoing on both deals. Um, Advising. I spend a lot of time coaching sellers on why buyers are doing what they're doing, why they're asking what they're asking, right? So it's a little bit of reminding people of the view from across the table, so to speak. So that's one thing. And then also, I always try to take a step back and I say, hey, look, I'm at 25 deals in 6 years, and this is a normal and fair request, and this is why, right? So I will be the first to tell the seller if it's a fair request.
Yeah.
Similarly, I will be the first to tell a buyer, to push back, right? If it is an unnecessary, redundant, duplicative request. Right. And so it's a little bit of, and you have to have both sides respect you, right? When you're making those calls, and they have to see that they have to see that the calls are going both ways. Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is important. But then sometimes you have to remind a seller of the goal. Right. And so, a seller might get irritated at some diligence request or something like this. And they'll say, well, gosh, I'm so frustrated with this buyer, on the other side of the state, whatever it is. Like, let's just restart the process with another buyer. And it's like, well, wait a minute. We could either take 2 hours and answer these questions, as painful as they are, or, we could tell this buyer we're done with them because of their diligence requests, and then restart the process, right? And add another 2 months to the time, or 3 months to the timeline. Right. And so sometimes it's a little bit of a sanity check about what the alternatives are, and just being clear eyed about that.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. So Ryan, we've got a couple more minutes. I've got 2 more questions that I want to hear your opinion on. One is, what questions should a business owner ask when interviewing M&A advisors? And then how important is, hey, have you sold a business in my industry? We get that question all the time. So would love to hear your thoughts on those 2.
Yeah, sure. So, okay. So thank you. So, what do I say to owners or sellers when they're evaluating advisors? First, like, we are in the business of professional marketing. That marketing is critical because that ability to tell a story, right? Like, that storytelling ability that you and I do with numbers, right? With data about the business, but also about the market and the opportunity of that business in the hands of the right owner. Like, that's critical. And so I tell every owner, like every prospective seller, like, simply look at how we write. Like, look at how we write, look at the quality of our marketing materials. And I send them not 1, not 2, but 3. I send them 3 marketing documents for past deals, right? Like, not fictitious businesses, real businesses that are operating in the market that they know of today. And I say, hey, these owners have given us permission to share these documents with you. Check out this 50-page document, right? Or this 21-page document we made about this business to tell this story. Right. So that's the first thing. Like, I just say, like, very carefully evaluate the quality of the marketing material. Right. And then the second thing is challenge yourself on if you're a priority for that firm. And I see a lot of owners make this mistake, and they'll say, hey, they have a lot of people at that firm. They must know a lot more buyers and, about another firm. And they might have 15 heads on their, 15, balding heads or whatever it is, on their About Us page, right? And it looks impressive. The reality is, when you peel it back, 11 of those are strategic advisors that don't do any deals, right? And so there's 4 people of the 15 that actually do deals. 2 of those 4 haven't done a deal in the last 2 years, right? And so check yourself on, you're looking for the right advisor, right? And I can't stress that enough. Not the biggest firm or the firm that's done the most deals, because those deals that might have been done in the past, they could have been done by a different advisor. They could have been smaller deals that have no relation to your $15 million fabrication business, like whatever it may be. Right. So it's really those 2 things. Like, you want somebody who's a priority. You want to be a priority for your advisor. I think that's critical.
I love it. And what about, have you sold a business in my industry?
Yeah, this question comes up a lot. I just got asked this question yesterday by a furniture manufacturer, $4 million in revenue, doing pretty well, like really healthy business. Have you sold any furniture? There's a lot because there's a lot of timber out here, right? So there's a lot of wood products related businesses in the Northwest. So Ryan, have you sold another furniture manufacturer? No, I have not, right? But then I said, right now I'm dealing with a fabrication business that has inventory, right? And dealing with fluctuations in aluminum price, in steel price, just like you're dealing with fluctuations in lumber. So and so I told that owner, I said, hey, in deal world, to me, like the inventory considerations coming up with that business are going to be very, very similar to the inventory considerations coming up in your furniture manufacturing business, right? Even though those are two different industries, right? And so I think about things in terms of deal similarities and less about industries, right? And so, that's how I address the question. And I try to give examples like that from other deals that may not appear relevant, from a headline perspective.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I agree, right? I mean, we've sold a ton of businesses, 30 businesses,
Okay.
and all across the gamut, right?
Yeah.
We are good at building the market. We know what's right in the deal. And it's important, in my opinion, that a business broker, M&A advisor has experience across the spectrum. They can do a $5 million deal, but have also done 50, 60, $70 million deals as well. Because, buyers are different. Strategic buyers and private equity buyers. I mean, I saw this the other day. I got copied on NDA red lines, and there were 15 people on the other side on this NDA red line with me and my 3-person team responding. Those are sophisticated buyers. And, part of what we do, we didn't touch on it today, but I do think it's important. I know you do it as well, but we build the right team. You're going to get the right M&A attorney, the right financial advisor, the right tax counsel or CPA to help us through the transaction. But Ryan, I really appreciate you being here today. You're a good friend, and you're an amazing person to have in my network. If someone wants to get in touch with you after listening today, what's the best way for them to do that?
We are easy to find on the internet. You can simply Google my name, right? You can Google Washington Business Brokers. You'll quickly find our site or some of the platforms and social media places that we are active on. The answer is all of them. Yeah.
Cool.